Hey everyone, Cursed Deck Builder here, making our way to 10,000 decks assisted. And here we are with a Zimone and Dina deck that is combo oriented. Now this deck comes to us from, find it, Crimson Arcanum, who only says this is one of their favorites, though it says up here, Baby's first attempt at combo, I'm Baby. So, as always, this deck list will be in the video description below, and I highly recommend you open up the deck list yourself and take a look before I go through the deck, see what things you would change, what things you would keep, and if you think of any suggestions that I haven't thought of, I'd love for you to comment below so we can work together to make this deck into the best version it can be. So who are Zimone and Dina, and why are we using them in a combo deck? Well, together they are a 3 mana Insultai, 3/4 human dryad that says whenever you draw your second card each turn, target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. And the more important part of them is that they can tap and sacrifice another creature to draw a card and then put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. And if you have 8 or more lands, you get to do this twice. It is wonder if you're playing it. It is Growth Spiral. It is Growth Spiral attached to creature sacrifice, and if you have enough lands, you do it twice. This is really interesting. I really like the idea of brewing around them, and this is what I would consider a particularly aggressive list of it in a good way. Like it's going in as many directions all at once, and we're going to see how well that plays out with our commander and how effective it can be. If we come here and look at the curve is really nice and makes sense as a higher powered, let's say, ramp deck, where we end up on sevens, and we have a few sixes, and a bunch of fives. And we're going to see which cards here are the ones that fit the best and which ones are not. How come these, interesting. View details? Wonder why it's not showing the mana here. Is this a context test? Nope. All right. Well, we'll have to go and look through the mana cost for each of them through the picture. For some reason, Moxfield doesn't want to work with us. All right. So, what is the core of this deck? The core of the deck is to play Zimone and Dina and have creatures to sacrifice that will ramp us towards stronger cards, and then after which we have a few combos that end the game. Some, let's say, more reliable than others. For example, we have Demonic Consultation and Thassa's Oracle in this deck. I feel like maybe this is too strong for this deck. Like, this is a really high level play, like high power play in a deck that has, as far as I can tell, very little tutors, if any, and yeah, and no real acceleration. So, with that in mind, the first thought I have is I don't quite understand why this combo's here. You're going to have to draw into it naturally, and in order to draw into it naturally, you're going to have to already be doing the thing. Like, you already have to be somewhat comboing off with Zimone and Dina, because they only give you an additional draw, and after eight lands in play, a second draw, plus the other natural card draws in the deck, it does feel that this combo doesn't belong. This combo is really good when you can, one, protect it, and two, secure it really quickly. This deck can do neither. So I think a lot of the times, half of this combo is going to rot in your hand, and you're going to feel particularly bad about it. Next, the other combos that kind of exist are generally about Zimone and Dina in some combination with infinite taps. Either we use it with Retreat to Coralhelm, which will untap Zimone and Dina infinite times. So as long as you have, I think this is really the main one, unless I'm being mistaken, where you want Retreat to Coralhelm there. So every time you play a land, you're able to untap Zimone and Dina and do it again. And then you want some kind of repeatable sacrifice outlets, mainly Bloodghast here, but you could probably get away with a few of the creatures that generate their own tokens, such as Jadar, Joriel, um, Reassembling Skeleton comes back. I believe, like Chasm Skullpool, you can divide into a lot of creatures. And Scoot Swarm is the other one that creates a creature every time. And Alandra also creates one creature every time. So there's definitely a bit of a combo there, but that combo is kind of complicated. It needs a lot of things to happen, and then you need cards like Zulaport Cutthroat or the like, or Retreat to Hagra with infinite landfall triggers to just draw through your entire deck and just defeat your opponents that way. Now, the feasibility of that is a little suspect, I would say, because there's too many kind of disconnected aspects to that. But much more importantly to me is that I feel like you need both Retreat to Hagra and where are you, Zulaport Cutthroat? Because if you remember, after you hit 8 mana, in order to do 1 damage, you draw 2 cards. And for a deck that draws a ton of cards, not only just as it's playing the game, but also to get to this combo, I am likely to believe you have less cards in your deck than you need to actually do the combo and defeat your opponent, which is interesting. Still, these are really good value plays, and this deck I think makes a lot more sense as a value landfall deck. In fact, I would argue the entire second half of the deck, and by second half I mean the higher CMC stuff, seems to be very much so in that direction. So with that in mind, I'm going to look at which parts stick out and could be removed, and which cards I would suggest to kind of fill out maybe the more combo side or fill out other parts of the deck. I think the safest direction to go in right away is we're looking over here, we can see that our mana setup leaves a lot to be desired. We are in a situation where we are a 3-color commander that is 3 mana. That's really, really tough to cast. I'm sure to an extent you're playing fetch lands and shocks and the Triome, but even then, it does also look like you're only playing on-color fetches. This is the kind of deck I would play every fetch available. Mainly, it works really well with landfall, but secondly, it works really well for a commander you want to play on the 3rd turn. But we need to fix this mana a little better. And I would argue, if we're playing Birds of Paradise, we should probably be playing Gilded Goose as well, where we really need it for that first mana of any color, and after which you can just chomp down on it with Zimone and Dina. They will have Goose for dinner, and you will get a land out of your deck, out of your hand into play, which will ramp you. The Goose has done its job. You can move on. I think that one's particularly strong. I would also probably suggest Utopia Sprawl for the same reason, as Utopia Sprawl can fix one, give you the additional color you're missing, so that you can go, some kind of Forest Utopia Sprawl, untap, play a untapped land, play Zimone. And because Zimone and Dina also, they have Summoning Sickness, it's okay to cast them turn 2 without a creature, because then you can drop another creature the turn after. The other thing I'm thinking about is I would like maybe a few more creatures that are free to sacrifice or benefit from sacrificing. Now, I'm leaning more towards the free to sacrifice, and by that I mean cards like Coiling Oracle, which have done their job once they've been played. The other ones would be, let me see. I'm thinking of specifically 2 mana in green, land, hand, battlefield, and let's say creature. And I'm thinking of the Satyr, and I'm thinking of another. So Satyr Wayfinder and Sylvan Ranger both come to mind. Now, neither of them put the land that they reveal into your hand, onto the battlefield, but Zimone does that already, so you're not really in a bad situation by playing these cards out and just keeping the land in hand. And Satyr Wayfinder has a bit more utility as it puts the rest of the cards in the graveyard, and you have a bit of a graveyard theme going there, so I think that would be particularly useful. Cards like Cultivate and Kodama's Reach could also just flat out be, um, my goodness, that hand, no, Forest Battlefield. Can't believe I can't remember this very crucial elf. Wood Elves. Literally does what the name says. But Wood Elves can replace these cards to an extent because not only do they play a land into the battlefield, they represent a sacrifice and another land, which is kind of Kodama's Reach when you think about it, with extra steps, where you play this card, you get the land, you use Zimone and Dina to sacrifice it to get a second land into play and draw a card. It's definitely worth just a little more value to not play Kodama's Reach and play the Wood Elves. And Wood Elves at least will get you the land by itself, so even if Zimone and Dina aren't in the game at the moment, you're not too far behind. So those cards come into thought. I would say any creatures that fix your mana and any low mana fixing is the one you want. Mana dorks are really powerful here because they allow you to pull out your commander early, but also can be sacrificed by your commander. The next thing I'm looking at is, once again, much like a Demonic Consultation, Offer You Can't Refuse seems to be in here because it is a card that goes into combo decks, but I don't think your combo is reliable enough or powerful enough to warrant an Offer You Can't Refuse. And what I mean by that is an Offer You Can't Refuse is a very, and I find myself saying this a lot, it could be because it's just recently been printed and so people really want to try it out. It is a very, very polarizing card. Like, it is not good unless you are at a very high level of commander. The fact that you're giving your opponent 2 treasure tokens is a massive, massive downside. And it only hits non-creature spells. So primarily how it's used is in CEDH to counter other counter spells. Because the idea is if your original spell goes through, you immediately win the game. And it does belong with Demonic Consultation, Thassa's Oracle, where you can play Thassa's Oracle, hold priority, play Demonic Consultation, and keep Offer You Can't Refuse up. But once again, that's a really difficult thing for your deck to do, so I just don't think you want to be in that direction. So I would toss that out. Brainstorm is fine. I wish you had more fetch lands like the Brainstorm, because the main perk of Brainstorm is to shovel those cards away. But I get how it works with a lot of your other cards that care about drawing the second card, so I won't be too hard on it. But Tear Asunder or Putrefy, either of which could just be Nature's End, or Nature's Claim, I believe it is. Nature's Claim, which is just 1 mana for the artifact or enchantment, which is often what you're using Tear Asunder or Putrefy for, more than the creature removal. And likewise, Mortality Spear. A spear seems just kind of weird here. I think you should just play Abrupt Decay if that's the card you want. Looking down here, Bloodchief's Ascension also feels a little strange because though it's easy to turn on, it is a part of your combo. I guess the point that I think I would like you to be considering a little more is I don't think you need as many payoffs for the combo. Like Bloodchief's Ascension is really good with a few cards here and there that make it infinite. You aren't playing those cards as far as I can tell, and so Bloodchief's Ascension really only works when you are milling out your, not even, when you're milling out your opponents. I'm not quite sure whether this is here, to be honest. It seems like just a value card in otherwise landfall deck. So I'd probably cut that for sure. Yeah. Okay. Looking at the creatures, a lot of the creatures are really solid. I'm a really big fan of almost all of them. Ethereal Investigator feels like just a little too much mana for this ability. We have this ability also on, where are you? Jolriel? and also where's our bigger one, Elandra. And Elandra is just better in almost every way. And Ethereal Investigator just is okay. The clue tokens are nice, but not like backbreaking. The fact that it only creates a 1/1 is kind of a downside. It's all right. I don't think you want to have three of these effects, and the third one is maybe just too much. Notion Thief feels weird here. It doesn't seem like what you want to do. You don't have wheels. Zimone and Dina don't want to sacrifice this. So I'm not sure why it's here other than being just a really good black-blue card. I'd probably cut it here. It's in a lot of decks, it has like flat value for just being able to stop extra draws. But here, it's not on theme and you're a proactive combo deck. So I don't know if I would play this. And if I would, um, there's definitely cards I would play before this. Hidetsugu and Kairi, likewise. I recognize that drawing 3 triggers some of our draw second card triggers, but that's a lot of mana to do that. It's a 5 mana brainstorm at that point, and the second ability, you have to be incredibly lucky for this to work out, right? Hidetsugu and Kairi are meant to be used in a high instant and sorcery deck, and here you're in a high creature deck. I just don't think it belongs here, and I would probably take it out. More likely than not, considering your high land count, considering that most of the high mana costs are creatures that you want to cast, I don't think it's particularly what you want. So I would cut that. Moloku is fine because you can just keep putting lands in your hand and triggering that. In fact, speaking of Moloku, I think this is kind of an expensive decision, but Amulet of Vigor could work really well in this deck because Zimone and Dina put your lands in tapped, and Amulet of Vigor would then untap them. And Amulet of Vigor plus Moloku creates a really, really interesting setup where the lands that you play can be tapped immediately after they untap, bounce back into your hand, and creates a 1/1 to create a kind of loop there, which works well with Retreat of Coralhem, always untapping Zimone and Dina. So that I like very much. And so up to you if you want to play this. It could be a huge boon for the deck because it just represents even more mana you get immediately by playing your commander. But it is kind of an expensive addition, so I'll leave that to you. Tatio was fantastic in a deck like that. No one needs to explain why. Watcher in the Water. Tapped with 9 stun counters. Whenever you draw a card during an opponent's turn, put a 1/1 blue tentacle. Whenever it dies, untap 1 Kraken and put a stun. Okay. Okay, I like this a lot because this, I think, functions a lot more with a lot of the synergies of the deck. Like, I would play this definitely over Ethereal Investigator because its ceiling is much, much higher. As long as you're drawing on your opponent's turns, you can have way more 1/1s, right? And I think that last text about stunning things down is kind of irrelevant. Most of the time, I feel that you are just going to be playing this for the tentacle creation and not so much for tapping things down. I don't even think you attack with this thing. I don't even think you're going to be able to. It takes 10 turns for this to do anything. But the fact that it is very much so a token generator, I think is rather cool. AC, just fantastic, just a land card. Consecrated Sphinx, once again, kind of strange. There's a few cards here that like the Sphinx, Notion Thief, and also Fairy Mastermind feel like they belong in a more wheeling kind of deck, where you were planning on using wheels a lot to empty your opponent, like to just draw a bunch of cards off of your opponents. But it doesn't feel like that's really what's happening here anymore. So I am kind of questioning their inclusion here. Consecrated Sphinx is good, but once again, it's very high mana for a card that doesn't really do much in the same way. It doesn't work with your combo. It's just kind of there, and though strong, it's just kind of there. I don't know. I think it's fine. It's a fine baseline to be playing a card like this, but it really just doesn't do much. I would say I would probably cut this from this list. Kodama on the East Tree, on the other hand, has a very high ceiling on what it does here because you are constantly being able to play extra lands by doing this. However, there is a bit of a ceiling here, I guess. So what does this do? This makes it so every time you use Zimone and Dina's ability, you play another land from hand. That's good, I guess. That's good, I guess, is the most I can say. Like it is strong and it does enable some really interesting plays, but once again, this is kind of a build around finisher. Like compare Kodama of the East Tree to Tatioba, right? Tatioba has just this really, really high ceiling and a direct kind of, or not a high ceiling, sorry, I should say, a really high floor that works exactly the way you think it does. You know, every time you play a land, you get another card, and you just keep moving and you just keep going, and I guess you're gaining life at the same time. Kodama of the East Tree asks you to be constantly drawing enough cards to keep up with its ability to play extra lands, and it does have a nice benefit of when you cast other big creatures to be able to put small, or big cards, I should say, permanents. But for you, it's basically all big creatures to put another permanent into play. That's neat, but it's dependent on what's on your hand, and it can vary from being really good to just okay. The main way this card is used is by cloning it with something that doesn't care that it's legendary, and then making infinite triggers and emptying your hand of cards. However, this deck doesn't have that ability, and therefore Kodama of the East Tree feels just kind of a strange include. Um, Moving on to Rampaging Baloths makes perfect sense. Avenger of Zendikar, that's fine. And Beladros, I believe, is kind of a flavor thing here. The fact that it creates pests to sacrifice, I think it's fine. Spending 10 life to untap your lands, I would probably ask to do what exactly, but otherwise it's good. I think the rest of the cards are generally very, very good. I think the last few things I would be kind of saying about this deck is that it couldn't hurt to have a little more generic card draw, you know, just a few options. Um, I think Thousand Year Elixir, this isn't card draw, but I just keep forgetting to mention this. Thousand Year Elixir, which is Tyvar without the other aspects of it, is definitely worth including. I wish it was cheaper, but unfortunately it's not. It's just another copy to keep Zimone and Dina both having pseudo haste and being able to use their ability multiple times a turn is really, really good. And then I think I would also argue for. I know I said I'd start with card draw, but I got distracted. Our card that says each untap. Let's see, type creature, color green. I guess that doesn't work. Color green. Oh, it did work. I'm foolish. Okay, so let's go look for Seaborn Muse. That's what I'm looking for. Something like Seaborn Muse is really, really strong here. I'm sure there's other aspects of it, but being able to use Dina multiple times in a turn cycle is probably going to be a very, very strong effect. So something like that, I would suggest. But going back to the main idea, if you would play something like Read the Bones, you know, you'd probably have a pretty good time of that. Painful Truths, yeah, Painful Truths you could probably get around with because it represents 3 cards because you're in 3 colors. Um, I think those kind of cards are fine, just 1 or 2 because your main card advantage engine is from Zimone and Dina. So having a few more ways to draw cards without having to worry about your deck comboing off is probably going to be particularly helpful. Okay, I think that's most of my notes. This feels like an early draft, and I think it has the ability to work really, really well. Oh, something I noted right now. I should have mentioned. Field of the Dead also works like Bloodghast, where you will be constantly creating zombies to sacrifice. So that's another good card to be playing. To which I wonder if you should be playing Expedition Map or the like to grab it, but I could be wrong about that. I think the deck is off to a really good start. I think we don't see landfall decks with blue often, I think we often see them in green and red, and then maybe green, black, red. So I think there's a lot of room to be trying some really cool stuff in this deck. Um, I think maybe solidifying the theme and solidifying the direction the deck wants to go in will be really, really, really beneficial to finding out where this deck is going to end up. This is one of those decks. Land decks have a pretty high ceiling of how strong they can be, but that ceiling can be rather expensive because at a certain point you might have to start considering all the fetch lands you're not playing, among other, you know, other decisions that you could put in, especially with older lands. The price can go up substantially, but so can the power of the deck. So I'm interested to see where this goes, and I hope you can find another draft of it because I'd love to see it. And if you'd love to send me that other draft, which I hope you would, or any draft of any deck, there is the form within the video description below that you can fill out. Send me your deck. I will take a look at it and hopefully make a video on it. And if you'd like to comment, like, subscribe, do that whole thing, I would be incredibly grateful as the channel is still growing and any help is much appreciated. I really like these two. I was hoping to pick one up at one point so I can just play around with the idea of a commander. But I will say, just as I mentioned, these kind of decks are really expensive, so it's probably out of my budget to build this commander deck in paper. So it's always fun for me to be able to build it online and help you guys build a version of the deck that you are happy with. All right, good luck.